Hey friends, I'm super excited you guys are here. Welcome to today. We're going to be talking about boundaries, but most importantly, hey, if you're jumping on in here today and you know that somebody that needs to hear this when we focus on boundaries, but most importantly, I want to welcome to you as we focus on self-love and when it comes to boundaries. And I want you to enter today with knowing some of the thoughts that you have, kind of finding some clarity on where you are when it comes to your boundaries, because I believe when you focus on boundaries, we truly focus on self-love. I think many times when we think of boundaries, we think of holding people back. But I want to focus on boundaries in a sense of focusing on loving not only ourselves, but allowing ourselves to love others more. And I think when you think of boundaries, you think of holding back or pushing away. But I want you to look at boundaries of a way of not only having more clarity in your life, but opening yourself to others more by setting those clear, intentional boundaries. And I know for myself, boundaries were challenging. Like I was like, man, if I was to give somebody a boundary, it would be me pushing away. But today I want you to think of boundaries as honestly a touch point, a connection point, a point of vulnerability, but most importantly, a point of strength. So, hey, I'm super excited you guys are here. My name is Sam. I'm a fitness entrepreneur and self-love coach, and, co-creator of the Self-Love 8 Dimensions of Wellness. And so we're really, and I want to say boundaries are one of those fundamental things that it comes into our lives. And if we don't have clear, intentional boundaries, if we don't have boundaries at all, it's going to be really hard to get towards your destination, because we live in a world that, hey, if you don't have a plan, it'll give you one. And I want you to think about that when it comes to this year so far, when it comes to your goals so far, when it comes to things that you're looking to achieve this year. Are your boundaries clear? Are you pushing towards the direction that you had in your life? Or do you find yourself running into roadblocks, or most importantly, following a different plan, falling short, feeling behind, or maybe even feeling resentful for saying yes to things that aren't truly a part of the plan you had for your life, saying yes to things that you feel that you shouldn't be doing, or saying yes with guilt. But today I want to give you an opportunity to find clarity on your path to loving yourself more. And I like to say that love is truly the foundation of everything. But so are boundaries. Clear, consistent boundaries. And if you find yourself like me, challenging with boundaries, like when you hear boundaries, the first thing you kind of feel like an anxiety or a fear. I want you to understand this today. If this is the only thing you get, that's okay. That's simply a sign that you're changing, that you're growing, that you're realizing your worth. And that's what I want you to leave here today with. I want you to leave here today with your worth. And I want you to shoot down in that comment section. What are some boundaries that you wish you had in your life? As we enter into this day, I want you to start thinking about, what do boundaries mean to me? What do boundaries mean to yourself? So I want you to grab that piece of paper, grab something to write some things down. Today, this is a workshop. It's time to do the work. It's time to find more clarity, which I believe clarity equals confidence. And confidence equals more joy in life. I want you to think about joy. The more confident we are, the more competent we are, the more confidence we have to show up for ourselves and for others. So when you set those boundaries, it isn't a way of pushing back, but it's a way of pushing forward in the direction that you want your life to go. I'm super excited you guys are here today. My name is Sam. Like I said, I'm a certified coach, So I'm giving you some key frameworks and strategies to move you strategically towards the direction of your life. And I believe boundaries are one of those key fundamental things that we need to have nailed down for not only ourselves, but for others around us. So I'm excited you guys are here. So, hey, shoot down in the comment section where you're from, where you're at, maybe something you're struggling with. I want you to realize that everybody in here, we are all, we could all need more boundaries in our lives, right? Can we all agree with that? We all need more boundaries in our lives. And we're going to be talking about some fundamental areas that we need more boundaries in, the fundamental areas that we need to set some boundaries in. So I'm excited you guys are here. Shoot that down in the comment section. Maybe some boundaries that you would like to, focus on today, or shoot down where you're from and share this out to somebody that you're like, man, you know what? They could really benefit from this. Share this out. Shoot that down in the comment section where you're from, where you're at. And we're going to dive on in today. I'm super excited you guys are here. So like I said, we're going to be focusing on how to set boundaries without feeling like a bad person. How many of us have felt like that? Like, your job asked you something. It was a family member asked you something. Maybe even your kids, your spouse. And they ask you like, hey, we've all had that. You get out of work and you get that phone call after a long day. You pick up that call and it's like, hey, on your way home, could you pick up, you're exhausted. I want to go to my friend's house after work. And then could you go grab this because I want to get a snack before I go. And you're dog tired, but your first thing you're like, yeah, sure, you can do that. You're tired. So as soon as you say yes, you hang up. And what comes in? Resentment. The resentment that you said yes to a plan that you weren't really fully on board, but you didn't want to not serve that person you loved. But you said yes to something that you're exhausted. You weren't honoring your energy. You weren't honoring yourself with that boundary. But you didn't want to feel like a bad person. Or maybe it's that family member that's like, hey, it's time to move. And you got a truck. Can you help me out this Saturday morning? And you're like, man, this Saturday is my only day off. But you have a truck and, they need to move. So you don't want to feel like that bad person. So you said yes. And you felt resentment. You felt like if I said no, we probably wouldn't be friends anymore. If I said no, they might not love me. They might not treat me like they did. They might think I don't care about them. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Because like many times when we think of boundaries as a bad thing, we think of boundaries, like I said, as a pushing away. But I want you to think of boundaries today is not building a wall, but allowing what you're going to let into your life. So I'm excited you guys are here because this, I believe, is a fundamental key to stepping in towards your destiny is by setting clear boundaries. Is by knowing what you want. And like I said, when you're clear and you're confident, I think things become received better, right? I want you to think about when somebody gives you a clear, solid no without excuses, how it's better received instead of like a no, but I don't know. You don't have to over explain yourself. I want you to know that no can be a final answer. And as we dive in today, I want you to start thinking about where are some areas that I need to maybe have more boundaries in my life? How can I be showing myself more love by setting clear and confident boundaries? So I'm excited you guys are here. We're going to dive on into this today, team. So, hey, shoot that down in the comment section. I want you to enter this workshop with clarity of maybe some areas you're like, man, have I been saying yes and really meaning no? Have I been saying yes and having that instant feel of resentment? Have I been saying yes, not in love, but out of fear? And I'm thankful you guys are here. So, okay, friends, we talked about how to set boundaries and without feeling like a bad person today. And I want to talk about this right here, friends. saying yes to everyone is saying no to yourself. When I heard that powerful quote right there, man, it really just stuck out to me. How many times have you been saying yes to everyone else, but not realizing you're really saying no to yourself? Saying no to your dreams, saying no to your goals, saying no to the things you're looking to achieve this year. When it comes to this year so far, how many times have you found yourself saying yes when you really meant no? And just really let that sink in. Have you entered this year with a higher sense of resentment, a higher sense of feeling like I'm not accepted for who I am? Because you've been saying yes to everyone else, but you've been saying no to yourself. And I really love this quote by Jay Shetty. It says, "Your no is powerful when your yes has value." I want you to hear that again, to really let that sink in. Your no is powerful when your yes has value. And I want you to think about, how could and when I heard this quote, I was like, man, that is such a powerful statement right there, because how do we give our no value? Or how do we give our yes a value? And I think about, what do we accumulate value in our lives? Like, things are more valuable the more limited they are, right? Can we say that? Like, if there was only 10 apples in the world and you had 5 of them, you would be the richest person in the world, right? Isn't that be crazy? Like, the things that are more scarce, we have the more value of. So the more we freely give yeses, the less value they have. I want you to hear that today. The more we freely give yeses, the less power they have. So when you start to barely say yes to things, when you start to say no, clear, it's powerful. It's powerful. And maybe when it comes to your goals and dreams, you've been giving your power away. And Sam, how could we possibly be giving our power away by saying yes? I love my family. I love my coworkers. I love my job. So I keep saying yes because I want to give them the best of me. But every yes is truly saying no to yourself, your dreams, your goals, and your energy. And I love this continuum wheel that we have here. You know, really think about how when we say yes to things, you know, we over functioning for others, right? When we say yes, we're over functioning for others. And then we always pay that emotional debt. And what is that emotional debt? That resentment, that fear, that longing for acceptance, or that fear of losing approval, right? And then we hold on to that silent resentment in the background. Like, if I didn't do that, they wouldn't accept me anyway, or they'll love me less, or they won't see me as dependable. How many of us find ourselves in silent resentment? Silent resentment for saying yes to things that we didn't truly want to do, but most importantly, we're in line with the person that you want to become. And I love this. It says, if you overspend your energy, you go into emotional debt. I love that. Wayne Dyer really touches on that point. He says, if you overspend your energy, you're going into emotional debt. And I think that we really find ourselves in a society where we push ourselves, like we're in that hustle culture where you got to go, living up to other people's expectations, but not realizing the emotional debt we're putting ourselves in. We're finding ourselves in over functioning for others. We find ourselves in that having that emotional debt and burnout, and then running on that silent resentment in the background, waiting for that one moment to just blow up in anger, fear of losing approval, but most importantly, letting the ego win. But I really want to talk today right here about this. I think this is a powerful statement that I need you to hear this today. Boundaries are not walls. That's a powerful thing. I need you to hear that today. Boundaries are not walls. Because walls keep everybody out. And walls are driven by fear. I want you to think about that. When you build a wall, you're trying to push something out. And walls are usually driven by fears. Like in medieval times, we had walls to hold out enemy armies or dragons or animals or wildlife. See, walls are built to keep something on the other side, that it will never have access. But I want you to think about when we're looking at boundaries, we allow healthy connections that are driven by truth. And I want you to think about boundaries as a gate. See, when we have a boundary, it gives us the opportunity to choose what we allow to have access to us. Not so much of as a wall that will never give you access, but a boundary is something that we have a barrier of entry. That we're not just going to let anybody and everybody in. And I think that many times we give that power away. And I want you to hear that today. We give our power away by not allowing a barrier of entry. See, the most powerful thing I ever learned in my life is that you don't have to give access to everybody. See, we live in a world where we're connected by cell phones, by internet, by technology. And so we feel like people need to have access to us 24/7. So when we think of not giving access to somebody, we think of we're going to have to build a wall. We're going to have to push them out, push them away. But boundaries aren't that. Boundaries are something healthy. It's a healthy point of connection. It's a healthy point of saying, hey, I'm going to let you in now. But if we're not moving in the same direction, I'm going to have to limit the access. And I really love this. I really love this. It says, guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. It often means you're changing. And I think that's such a powerful statement when it comes to boundaries, because how many of us, when we feel like we set a boundary, we feel guilty. We feel like we're pushing them away. Like we said, we feel like we're building up a wall. Or when we say no, it's hard for you to say no without guilt. But I want you to realize, I love that mindset shit, that guilt doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that you're changing. And simply change, you guys, is a part of life. But I really love what Marianne Williamson says. She says, fear-based love says, if I don't give, I'll lose them. But I love this. It says, true love includes truth. I want to repeat that again to really let that sink in. It says, fear-based love says, if I don't give it, I'll lose them. True love includes truth. And that's what boundaries are. They give us that healthy connection that's driven by truth, that's driven by purpose. But most importantly, it's driven by power. And like I was talking about earlier, I think we separate the two so much. We think you can't have a boundary and operate out of love. But a boundary is love. A love letter not only to yourself, because when you have clear, confident boundaries with yourself, you empower others to do the same. And it allows you to bring your truth without fear, without doubt, but with the knowing that as I'm true to myself, I allow you to do the same. And I want to talk about that because I think this is a powerful thing is, we find ourselves in that resentment. And I want you to look at resentment like this. How many of us have those fire alarms, right? In our lives. And I love this analogy. Resentment is like that smoke alarm. When it's going off, it's that unspoken boundary that's always hitting in the background. When you are operating out of resentment, it's that unspoken boundary. I want you to think about that fire alarm in the background. When people don't change the battery and it's always beeping in the background, that beep, beep. It's that unspoken boundary. And I want you to think about your life when you don't have those boundaries, those unspoken boundaries in the background, then we wonder why those moments where you just like that panic sets in or that anger sets in, that fear. How did that anger come up so quick? How did that fear come in so quick? Because we haven't set a clear boundary. So it's always just beeping in the background because we've never set that clear boundary. But I really love how Brené Brown says here. She says, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. Man, and that right there was a game changer for me. Because how many of us equate availability, saying yes, doing more as kindness? And I really realized for a long time in my life, that's where I was. I struggled a long time with a thing called people pleasing. So I figured if somebody else was unhappy with me, I was being unkind. If I didn't offer my services, I was being unkind. But I really love that mindset shift that Brené Brown offers here. She says, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. Because when you are unclear, people build stories. And I want you to think about when people have been, unclear with you. They haven't really been clear. They're like, well, I'm just busy. Busy doing what, right? And then it leads people to build stories for themselves. They're like, well, maybe they don't like me, or, we don't truly know what people are going on in the background when people aren't clear with us. We don't know if they're truly hurting. We don't know if they're sick. How many times have we gotten into arguments or just a simple misunderstanding that could have easily been cleared up if somebody was like, hey, I'm sick. They call out, but they don't tell why. They're not clear why they call out. So you're like, well, maybe they don't want to work today. But if they were to say, hey, man, I called out because I'm sick. We were nice and clear. And now you're not building a story in your background. So I think when we have clear, intentional boundaries, not only are they kind, but we don't lead people to build stories about things in the background. And you think about when people build stories, it's usually a story builds resentment signals. So resentment signals boundaries violation. It's the fire of your unexpected boundary is missing. I want you to think about that. I love that. Resentment signals a boundary violation. It is the fire of the unexpected boundary is that missing alarm. And I want you to think about that when it comes to your goals and your dreams so far. How many signals have we missed? How many boundaries have you not set? How many times have you been unclear in your life and wondering why things aren't going the way you thought they would? Right? Story have been built in the background about you because you just simply haven't been clear on the mission you have in your life. But when you set that clear boundary, it's kind. It's kind not only to yourself, but to everyone else. And I want to talk today about the 3 boundaries you actually need. Because I think many times when we think of boundaries, we think of just the emotional boundaries, right? We think about the boundaries we have between others, protecting our peace. But this one really shocked me. It really comes down, we need to have these 3 boundaries in our lives. We need to have those emotional boundaries that protect your inner peace. We need to have those time boundaries, protecting your priorities. And we need to have those energy boundaries, protecting your capacity. Because how many of us, what areas in these boundaries do you realize today you need more of? I want you to look at that. Think about, do I need more emotional boundaries? Am I protecting my peace truly? When I look at my relationships, am I protecting my peace? Are there certain people that I need to have less access with? That every time I come around them, it's never something positive. Maybe it's more a negative on that side. Not saying we need to build a wall, but we need to limit our access, right? That we need to protect that emotional place. If you find yourself being riled up and always fear mongering, maybe we need to protect our peace in that way. Maybe it's time. Maybe you feel like, man, I just feel like I'm running everywhere back and forth, like I'm running a race and I'm never catching up. And that could just simply be we're not protecting our time by protecting the priority, by prioritizing what truly matters. So you feel like you're running from pillar to post, back and forth each and every minute of the day. And you're like, man, I just feel like I've been running all day. But we haven't truly protected our time. Or maybe you've had talk about protecting your energy, your capacity. That people just keep asking, can you do this, do this? And we have those energy vampires. We surround ourselves with people that are just simply draining our energy because they know you're a joyful person. But it's time to really start setting boundaries in these three areas, realizing that this is where the foundation of our boundaries are built. And this is something that's truly changed my life right here. I am not responsible for managing your emotions. This was a hard one for me when it comes to relationships, when it comes to that emotional boundaries, that first boundary that we're talking about today. Because, I really love how Eckhart Tolle, he talks about the pain body. And he says, you are the awareness behind the reaction. So when someone reacts strongly, it's their pain body activated. I want you to hear that today. And this is what really changed for me because, person A, right? It's their pain body. They're going through challenges, setbacks, fears, doubts, everything the other day. But we have to be person B here. We can't allow other people's emotions to affect ours. But most importantly, that we are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. And the shift is that we can validate people's emotions without absorbing them, right? So they'll be going, when they're like, I'm angry at so-and-so. Sally's made me so mad today. I've gone through this. We can acknowledge that they're angry at Sally and that they have that anger. But we don't need to absorb that. We don't need to be like, man, Sally is wrong. So now I'm going to absorb that anger and be have that same emotion towards Sally. We don't have to do that. We can validate. And this is one thing that has really, truly empowered me. I love what Eckhart Tolle says here about the pain body, that we can validate things without absorbing it. Just because others are angry doesn't mean we need to be angry. That we can judge our world. And I think that there are many things that we find ourselves in a world that it has to be a black or white world that says, if it's not this way, it has to be this way. And I really love this shift. It is, we can validate others' opinions without absorbing them. I want you to hear that today. You can validate others' opinions without absorbing them. We don't have to absorb their fear. We don't have to absorb their doubts. We don't have to absorb their angers. We don't have to absorb their limitations. And I want you to run back, and it really helps me is this internal script that I always have playing in the background. It says, I understand you're upset. I'm not able to fix that for you, though. And that's kind of what I had like running in the background. I don't really just say it to everybody, and I just tell people, man, I understand you're upset. That's crazy. But I say, I'm not able to fix that for you. And I really love that dynamic because it takes the power, it takes the energy that they've been giving me, and it gives it back to them. When you say, I'm not able to fix that for you. That anger, that fear, that doubt, that limitation, I'm not able to fix that to you. It's handing back that energy to them. It's saying, I understand you feel that way, but I can't manage your emotions for you. So I'm going to give them back to you. And I think that's a powerful motion, because when we give that back to them, it gives them that same power that, hey, if they don't have to take it, neither do I. I want you to hear that today. How many of us feel like we have to take that anger, that fear, that doubt, that limitation to validate others? That we have to be the validator. That if they're angry, we must be angry. If they're fearful, we must be fearful. If they feel limited, we must be limited. But I want you to hear this today. You're not responsible for managing other people's emotions. But most importantly, that you can validate them without absorbing it. And that you can, and I love that inner script that I have, that you can understand that they're upset. But you can also allow them to know that you're not able to fix that. And you can build yourself that barrier of entry. And I love this. He says, your time reflects your values. And we're talking about that time barrier there. And I want you to realize that, yes, your time reflects your values. I think time is the greatest currency we ever have. I value this moment I have with you because I know that I'll never have this moment again. I want you to hear that again. You will never have this moment again. So time is not only your greatest currency, but your time reflects what you truly value. And when you come to your value, are you focused on on your priorities? Or have you been mismanaging time? Because time waits on no one. We've heard that many times. And I really love what Deepak Chopra talks about. So, the time boundary. He says, time mismanaged is often misaligned priorities. I need you to hear that today. Time mismanaged is often mismanaged priorities. And when it comes to your priorities, have you been mismanaging them? And I really love what he says this. Stillness clarifies what truly matters. Isn't that powerful? The stillness clarifies what truly matters. It's really slowing down and being present, realizing that this moment, you'll never have this moment again. When you realize how valuable time is and how time will wait for no one, that, man, time is so valuable. So it's time to be focused on that priorities and stop mismanaging your time, because your time reflects your values. And here's the shift. Schedule yourself first. I need you to hear that today. It's time to start scheduling yourself first. Scheduling what starts to truly matters first. I think many times we're taught in the world to put ourselves last, especially as employees, as parents, in our relationships. The last thing we schedule is ourselves. But here's the true shift that when you make this will truly change your life. Schedule yourself first. Schedule your time first. What truly is the priority what is truly the vision you have for your life? What is truly going to push you towards your destiny? And start scheduling that first. Because when you do that for yourself, you allow others to do that for themselves. See, that's where love starts. Love starts with you. With you scheduling yourself first. See, when we love ourselves, we allow ourselves to love others. And stillness clarifies what truly matters. It's those moments of stillness. And so I want to give you some actionable tool here. The delayed yes. Let me check my schedule. That's a simple thing, a simple tool here. It's the delayed yes. Somebody asks you to do something. I like to do this. Give a pause. A moment of stillness. And you say, let me check my schedule. You don't have to say yes immediately. Like me, for a long time, I thought if I delay the yes, they're going to build a story. But in that clearness, let me check my schedule, changes everything. It gives you an opportunity to not only honor their time, but know that when you say yes, you can be still, you can be present, but most importantly, it lets people know that they're the priority. That when you say yes, you made them the priority, but most importantly, you made yourself a priority. See, when we say yes with resentment, when we say yes without fear, we're saying no to ourselves. And we're truly saying to others, no to them as well. Because we'll always constantly have that resentment blaring in the background. But when you say yes from stillness, from love, from peace, we make them the priority. But not only do you make them the priority, you make yourself the priority. Now, I want you to hear this today. I know we hear this many times, but you cannot pour from an empty cup. How many of us have heard that multiple times and still continue to do it? And I'd like to say that just because it's common knowledge doesn't mean it's common practice. It's easily done when it comes to our jobs and in our relationships. We are always taught to pour till we can't pour no more. But today, I need you to understand this. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And just like I love this analogy of this plant, neglected soil equals chaotic growth. But when we tended soil, we have the vibrant blooming. How many of us have been building from resentment, from fear, and wondering why our growth is chaotic and sporadic? But when you have been tending the soil from love, you've been watering it with grace, you've been managing your yeses, your times, your emotions, your energy, everything seems to just trend steady and beautifully. And this is what happens when we have that energy boundary. I really love what Sarah Jakes Roberts says. She says, you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. I want you to hear that again because that one really stood out to me. That one changed my life. Sarah Jakes Roberts, she says, you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. And I think that's many times like you wouldn't drink from the same waterbed where that got you sick, right? And expect that water to just eventually get clean. And I think many of us find ourselves in that same position. We find ourselves in a job that's draining our energy, in relationships that are draining our energy, and friendships that are draining our energy, and thinking that time heals all wounds. Haven't we heard that time will heal all wounds? But I really love this quote that says, you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. So if you're in an environment that has not honored your energy, you can't heal there. And that can be scary too. Scary because that forces us to change, right? That forces us to step out of our comfort zone. That forces us to say no. How many of us are in jobs and in relationships or in friendships that we're constantly saying yes, but our insides have been saying no for a long time? But you're holding on because that pain has become normal. But I want you to hear this today. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And if you do not tend to your own soil, weeds grow. Weeds of fear, weeds of doubt, weeds of chaos. I think the most powerful thing I want you to hear is that if we don't tend to our own soil, weeds grow. And there's a power dynamic there because maybe you find yourself in a season of life where you're like, man, there's weeds everywhere. And that just means that there's some things that are going to have to change. That uncomfortableness means that things have to change. But I love the analogy of weeds because when you look at a garden, what do we have to do? There's some things that we're going to need to remove from your life. And that can be a hard place when you've been there for a very long time. Your roots are down deep. But when we start to remove those weeds from our lives, we allow the beauty to grow. That's where the flowers grow, right? Flowers bloom without weeds. Weeds steal the water from the flower's need to growth. And weeds will limit your growth. You're like, I'm still been growing though, but weeds will always limit your growth. But when you remove the weeds, remove the setbacks, remove the fears, remove the doubts, and start building boundaries in your energy, that's where growth lies. And this is an internal script I want you to hear. This situation drains me, and I need space. And it's a simple thing. It's just to simply reduce frequency to protect your peace. And like we talked about earlier, see, I think many times when we think we need things to change, we're going to have to cut them off. And I love this internal script because it's just all you got to do is reduce the frequency. It's not building a wall or shutting a door or cutting them out or plucking them off and throwing them away. No, it's just this situation drains me so much that I'm not going to make it a priority. This situation drains me so much that I'm going to reduce the frequency and the time of barrier of access to me. This situation is such a drain on me. It's not going to be the highlight of my day. I'm going to make time for things that truly matter because not only do I matter to me, but you do too. See, when we realize we give barrier of access to others, we're not pushing them away. We're bringing them closer. We're being more clear, not only with them, but with ourselves. And see, when we're clear with others, we allow them to be clear with themselves. And it's time, I think this is the most powerful thing here. It's time to start choosing discomfort over resentment. I need you to hear that today. It's time to start choosing discomfort over resentment. We've been taught to live in resentment for so long, like that fire alarm beeping in the background, that we would rather choose resentment over discomfort. And the discomfort is simply saying no, or simply saying, I'm not available, or simply saying, I can't do that. But it's time to start choosing discomfort over resentment. That silent resentment over temporary discomfort. It's time to start choosing the uncomfortable thing. I really love what Brene Brown, she says, the marble jar metaphor. She says, trust is built through small, consistent actions. Isn't that true? Trust is built through small, consistent actions. And I really love this. I think many times when we think of setting boundaries, we think of pushing away, but setting boundaries actually increases trust because it provides clarity. I need you to hear that today. When you are clear in your boundaries, you're actually building clarity. And clarity builds trust. I want you to think about the people who are the most clear with you. When you have a clear, consistent boundary, like, hey, I can't do this, it builds more trust with people. They're like, hey, I thank you for being clear with me. So now you can trust you more. I think many times we feel like if we build trust by being more available, but we build trust by building more boundaries. When you are clear on your boundaries and clear in the direction of your life, It builds trust. And I really love, like you said, trust is built through small, consistent actions. And I want you to look at your life. If you're looking to build more trust, not only with yourself, but with others, what are those small, consistent actions you can take each and every day? Now, let's learn exactly what to say because I know for me, for myself, I had to really dive in like, what can I really say in those challenging things? What are those scripts that I can really say to get me moving in the right direction that I want to be in my life? So, this is it, the anatomy of the perfect boundary. I love this because this is what I use, and this is a framework that will change your life when you let it. The anatomy of the perfect boundary. I care about you. You see, what it does is I think many times, when somebody asks you to do something, I care about you. It's kind, it validates the relationship. So I said, Walter calls me, Sam, I'm moving this Saturday. I have a lot of boxes to move. You have a truck. Can you help me? I'll say, hey, I care about you. And when I say I care about you, that establishes our relationship. It says, hey, we're friends. And I can't do that thing. I can't help. I'll say, Walter, I can't help. You move this Saturday. It's clear. It states the boundary without apology. It doesn't need to be, Walter, I can't because I have to go to my kid's baseball game. It's just, Walter, I can't do that. And that states a boundary without apologizing. See, when you're clear with him, that builds trust. He's like, man, well, he's just not available. He doesn't have to guess of what's going on. It's just, man, I can't do that thing. But here's what I can do instead. I can see if somebody else that I know has a truck, if they're available. I know somebody else that has a truck and they might be able to help you out. And what that offers an alternative without the, applicable. I don't know that word. That word always gets me. I put it on there. But you remove the obligation. And I think many times, when we can say no, we feel like we're hurting each other's. And I love this framework saying, I care about you and I can't do that thing, but here's what I can do instead. And I really love what Thich Nhat Hanh said. He says, speak in a way that others can hear you. Tone matters as much as the context. So I want you to realize that, if I was like, I care about you, I can't do that, but here's what I can do instead. That'd probably be received a little rude, right? You'd be like, dang, man, that's not very nice of you. But if I said, you know what, Walter, hey, I care about you. I can't do that. But, I could help maybe next week and I'm available. You offered a different option and really realizing how my tone matters. I want you to think about the tone of how you would want to be approached. And I really like to think about when it comes to tonality, I like to come from the other person's perspective. Like, how would I like to be perceived in their eyes? And that helps with the tone automatically. Like, how you would want to be approached. So I like to approach it that way. Like if they were coming at me, if I was looking at me from their eyes, how would I like to be approached? And that really helps with my tonality. Usually a soft, like, hey, hey, I can't do that. If you're friends, but I can do this. But here's what I can do instead. That's just a nice little tone of, hey, I see you, you matter, and I'm willing to help if I can in any way. And that's all we really need. And, expect push-up. I think many times, expect a pushback. Would you really go into, I expect my friends to push back a little bit. I expect my relationships to push back with me a little bit. I expect the people that matter to push back, and that's okay. But you can stay centered. I love what Wayne Dyer says. He says, you cannot always control what goes on the outside, but you can always control what goes on inside. And I love this analogy that Wayne gives. He says, what happens when you squeeze an orange? Orange juice comes out, right? What happens when you squeeze a lemon? Lemon juice comes out. So what happens when we squeeze you? Is it resentment? Is it fear? Is it doubt? Is it anger? Or is it love? Because not everyone's going to celebrate your growth. But what comes outside of you It's what's inside. What comes outside of you when you're squeezed? Has it been resentment lately? Has it been fear? Has it been doubt? Because the only thing that comes out is truly what's inside. And I really love like what Wayne Dyer says. It's just, you cannot always control what goes on outside of us, but you can always control what goes on inside. And I think about that. What's going on inside of me? If I had more love, would love come out? But I really love this. It says, do not let someone else's pain, body, hook yourself. I need you to hear that. Not letting other people's pain, other people's fears, other people's doubts dictate what you do. But most importantly, dictate what comes out of you. Observe the emotion without engaging. See, we can observe people's emotions without engaging in them. We can observe their fear and not engage in their fear. We can observe their pain and not engage in their pain. We can observe their doubt and not engage in their doubt. See, I think that's the most powerful moment when it's not putting up a shield, but it's bringing that barrier of access, knowing that we don't have to play that game. We can stay still, stay centered, but most importantly, we can still come from love. And the biggest key here is never over-explain your boundaries. I need you to hear that today. Never over-explain your boundaries. Repeat the boundary calmly. Do not escalate. Do not defend beyond one clarification. So after you've spoken what you said, I love to see you. So it says, I'm so, I wanted you to give that before. This is that over-explaining. I love to see you, but I'm protecting my downtime this weekend. Let's catch up next week. That's clear. That's conscious. And then when somebody asks again, what do you mean? Well, repeat that same boundary. Repeat your same boundary, calm. You don't have to escalate it. You don't have to defend your boundary beyond that clarification. You said, you don't have to say, I'm so sorry. I really wish I could make it, but my boss is being crazy and my dog is sick and I just feel so bad for letting you down. And I think as many times I found myself in that situation, always having to find validation for my reason to say no, to protect my peace, to protect my worth. But when I stopped over explaining, when I just, was like, I love to see you, but I'm protecting my downtime this week and let's catch up next week. And I didn't escalate it. And I didn't defend myself beyond the clarification. It was accepted. They were like, oh, I love that. I love that for yourselves because that gives them the opportunity to do that for themselves. I think is when we as humans mirror each other. So when you mirror that from somebody else, when you mirror that love for yourself to others, it allows them to mirror that for themselves. And I want you to hear this. Boundaries are self-respect in action. I need you to hear that today. Boundaries are self-respect in action. So we talked about our emotional boundaries, our time boundaries, our energy boundaries, and how those are a holistic approach to our lives. That you can't have one without the other. That if you aren't having your boundaries in your emotions and not in your time, they're always going to fluctuate between the two. They have that holistic approach to your boundaries. And if you resent it, you probably, and I love this, when it comes to your boundaries, are self-respect in action. But I like to say boundaries are self-love in action. Because if you resent it, you probably need a boundary. If you fear losing someone by telling the truth, that relationship needs honesty. And I really love what Marianne Williamson says. She says, As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give people the permission to do the same. Woo! Isn't that powerful? As we let our light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. Isn't that powerful? That boundaries are self-love and self-respect in action. And I really love that shift right there. If you've been questioning, like, do I need a boundary in that area? If you resent that, you need a boundary. If you fear losing somebody by telling them the truth, that relationship needs more honesty. So if you find yourself here today ready to master the sacred art of boundaries, boundaries are one of the hardest parts of the self-love, I believe. Boundaries are one of the hardest parts of self-love to practice. If you want that support of learning how to set them and hold them, I have 2 private coaching sessions that are open. Just DM me boundaries and then we'll talk. And I also want to offer you guys something super powerful here. I have an 8 dimensions of wellness free alignment session I want to offer everybody in here today just for your time, because I realize how valuable your time is. But it's a free assessment to see where you are in your 8 dimensions of wellness. We'll set a clear, give you a number, a starting point, and we can build from there. We'll give you 3 areas of where you need more consistency at, and we'll give you a nice little roadmap to where you can find more balance in your 8 dimensions of self-love wellness. So I'm super thankful you guys are here. But like I said, if you're ready to find more boundaries in your life and your key strategies to stick to them, and you're ready to master that art of boundaries, just DM me boundaries, and I would love to work with you. I want to say this today. I want to say this. You deserve to live a life without resentment. A life full of love. A life on purpose. And that starts with you. I want you to hear that today. When it comes to the boundaries that we talked about today, where could I need more boundaries, Sam? Where have I been feeling a lot of resentment in my relationships, in my job, in my friendships? What are more boundaries that I need to set when it comes to my time, when it comes to my energy, when it comes to my emotions? I want you to leave here today with clarity, but most importantly, ready to take some action. So realize that, hey, it's time to do the work. It's time to not only realize that you matter, but it's time to realize that it's time to do the work. It's time to start trusting ourselves again. It's time to start believing that you matter, because you do matter. So I would love the opportunity for you to take me up on. I have 2 of those spots open for those boundary coaching. I offer a 4-week course, 8-week course, a 12-week course. But first, you have to have your 8 dimensions of wellness alignment session done. So hey, let's work together. But most importantly, I want you to realize that you don't have to do this life alone. We can go through this together. So DM me boundaries. Share this live with somebody that needed to hear it. If you need to set more boundaries in your life, please feel free to reach out to me. And let me know what you learned. Take a screenshot. Let me know something you learned today about boundaries. I'd love for you to shoot me in the inbox if this served you, or maybe shoot down the inbox something you would like to cover. You would like me to talk about. I would love to hear something you'd like to talk about as well. But at the end of the day, friends, I want you to understand this: that boundaries are self-love in action. They're self-love in action. That boundaries aren't walls. They're barriers of entries. But having that clear boundary, having that joy, having that trust, having that peace through the process is something you can have. But most importantly, realize that starts with you. I'm super thankful for you guys. Shout out to you for showing up and doing the work. Join me next week for our next talk. But most importantly, share this with somebody that needs that. Realizing that this journey of love, you don't have to do it alone. We can do it together. So make today the day you not only set clear boundaries, but you step forward realizing that boundaries are self-love in action.